So every decade I play a game for nostalgic purposes and to refresh my memory. Snatcher is such a game from the mid-90s which sparked my interest for the cyberpunk genre. Just a quick roundup of what Snatcher actually is. Snatcher on SEGA CD is a 1994 visual text-based cyberpunk thriller adventure produced and directed by Hideo Kojima. The user interface is classic text-based adventurism. Is that a real word? With a range of options to choose from, which eventually will give you more options during conversations. What sets the game apart from other text-based adventures is its visual attractive cyberpunk setting. I'll get to that in a minute. Its storyline, I'll get to that as well. The voice acting, music and shooting sequences. In 1994, Snatcher was one of the first big text-based adventures released on a mainstream console, the SEGA CD. The SEGA CD wasn't a successful console at all, although there were some great games on it, like Snatcher. This review is about the financial successful remake was initially launched on the MSX as a top-down / text-based adventure game. The SEGA CD remake is just a text-based adventure with spruced up images. But it is this Snatcher game that most people are known with, mainly because of the commercial distribution to a broader console user base. This version also incorporates CD quality synthesizer music, sound effects, and audio voice acting. Now there are more Snatcher versions out there, but in my opinion the SEGA CD is the better one. There's also a PlayStation 1 version, a SEGA Saturn version, TurboGrafx 16, and a remake of the MSX version called SD Snatcher. Maybe there's more, I don't know. Now the PlayStation and SEGA Saturn version are both in Japanese. I've tried to play these versions before with a 50-page printed out translation next to me, but I just couldn't work it. Even though I've been playing the SEGA CD version for 26 years, I have no idea how to work those menus in Japanese. It never got the fan translation like Please Nots on PlayStation 1, so it's better to stick to the SEGA CD version. Now I'm not going to spoil the main storyline here, but I'm going to review how this game holds up in 2020. To get back to the setting, yes, Kojima has pulled his inspiration for the design and parts of the story from Blade Runner, otherwise known as To Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, a sci-fi novel by Philip K. Dick. Simply put, if you like the Blade Runner movie, you feel right at home with this game setting. Then there's the storyline, which is a mix of Blade Runner but also an invasion of the body snatchers. Add the fact that the snatchers themselves are modeled after Terminator, and you have Snatcher. So Kojima adds his own influences in this game, but also adds his own interest in there, like the Cold War tensions between the United States and Russia from the 1960s, which can also be seen in his later on games from the Metal Gear series, namely Snake Eater. So let's talk about the actual gameplay. A fair warning though, this game requires a lot of patience. Another quick summary of the game. You play Gillian Seed, a junker, special law officer that hunt down snatchers, cyborg entities that replace humans in order to dominate the world and with own hidden agendas. Along the way, you meet people with their own secrets as the story unfolds into a linear cyberpunk detective thriller in which you move around, although movement is pretty limited. For starters, the user interface in 2020 is an enormous drag. For this review, I played the game from end to start and captured this footage. When I was 12, I was satisfied with how you interact with the characters. Place it in its current time frame and this selection menu is feeling utterly slow. Selecting an option brings up other options, but you can also go back to the current menu. A rotational selection wheel would have been a better option. If you never played the game before, this interaction menu is going to be the biggest letdown. I've gotten used to it, but it's still a chore to get through the menus in order to get to the next selectable option available. It doesn't help either that many times I pushed too fast and chose the same action again. This happens frequently, as the game wants you to do some actions multiple times. For instance, there are two options. You can either look or investigate an item or person. Many times the developers want you to look or investigate an item or person 2 or 3 more times. I understand the reason why, because a detective in real life would look at an object multiple times to really see a clue instead of just glance at it. The option menu, however, is such a chore, so I tap the action button way too fast in order to get to the desired option, and I accidentally repeat the previous dialogue. Then again, the dialogue, even in 2020, is written with great detail and is still fresh as it ever was. The game is also full of typical Hideo Kojima humor, though it's not full tilt as the Metal Gear series, but it's there. The first thing is that your detective partner is Metal Gear. In 1994 this was just a reference, but this Metal Gear later on becomes your partner in Metal Gear 4 on a PlayStation 3 as Metal Gear Mark II. There are also a lot of Konami and Sega references, from outside billboards to characters in the game. Back when things were still great between Kojima and Konami, of course. So to get back into the game consists of 3 acts. After each climactic act, the new act starts and you get a quick recap of what happened in the previous act. If you play the acts right after another, it's pretty unnecessary, but it's great that the voice actors get some dialogue. And man, it's great that this version has actual great audio. The voice acting is lively, there aren't many voice actors present, but they can make enough distinguishable voices so it isn't too bad. The most memorable pieces of audio, however, are the music tracks.
We must hurry. We'll use a turbocycle to travel to the scene.
Be careful, Gillian.
This is a turbocycle, specially designed for jumper use.
After almost 3 decades, I can still hum the music from start to end. It's tense, exciting, moody, and at some points, together with what's happening on screen, can be scary. Scary? Well, remember, I was 12 when I played this game. There are some well-placed jump scares, and there's an atmospheric vibe all over it. There's also some violence and some real-life gore into this game. The box art says teen with a reason, but that didn't stop me or anyone from just buying this game. It's not constant blood on screen, but well placed at jarring key points. And that's how the game is built up. It's at some point a wall of text, but it's alternated with spoken dialogue and shooting sequences. Yes, shooting sequences. How, you ask? Well, it's a nice change of pace at some times, but to be honest, these shooting sequences are pretty much undesirable. They slow down attention in my opinion, as they are just a button mashing, fast reaction test in which you need to remember the first enemy that came on screen and shoot that one first. In Act 1 and 2, these shooting sequences are really easy and feel like a distraction. In the third act, however, you need to step up your game because it goes from 0 to 80, and I died in 2 sequences just on this playthrough alone. What annoys me the most about these shooting sequences is that you always have to pull your gun before you can shoot. Some shooting sequences don't even give you the time to pull out your gun, so you get the first shot before you can even shoot back. Also, as you control your aim with a controller, the reticle flies all wonky over the grid. And if you take a second or two too long with one of these Snatcher security spiders, you might end up in a downward spiral of getting shot up and dying. I wish these shooting sequences could be done with a SEGA Manager. That would even the odds against a Snatcher. But then again, these shooting sequences can be counted on one hand alone, so I understand that it's not worth the programming. There are some other tiny annoying things about the game though. Since the game is linear, you have to complete actions in a specific order to unlock other conversational actions or other locations. Sometimes you even have to move back and forth many times at the same location to unlock a sequence in order to proceed. Which is very pointless and time consuming to say the least. It's more nonsensical and makes you wonder what the point was at all when you walk in a room for the 4th time. There are some times you need to call people through your Metal Gear sidekick. Every time you do, you have to punch in the number manually. You can ask Metal Gear for the number, but he doesn't dial it automatically for you. You would think that in the future they would have a phone book installed in Metal Gears. As you can see, the pixel sprite graphics are absolutely terrific, specifically when characters are right up close and big on your screen. However, the area views or NPCs are far less detailed. It breaks the mood a bit. They look more comical. But hey, you have a penguin doing backflips, so all is forgiven. And I know it might be a stereotypical era thing, but the fact that Gillian is trying to hit up on all the women in the game or has a flirty comment in his head gets very old. It's the same as Brock from Pokemon trying to hit up every woman in every episode. Overall, you as the player are going from place to place in order to uncover the reason why Snatchers are replacing humans, and encounter lots of clues that need to be solved to make the puzzle fit. You do this in Act 1 and 2 for the most part. Act 3 is more of a wrap-up act, as you uncovered most of what's going on by then. The last 30 to 40 minutes especially is just a reveal story and you can lay down your joystick by that point. You can finish this game in about 9 to 10 hours. Each act takes up about 3 hours. So my thoughts on Snatchers in 2020? Well, I still enjoy the game and I think I will be enjoying this game forever. It's a typical Kojima story game, meaning if you are into that, you will like it. It's tense, gripping, and will leave you thinking about humanity and technology. It certainly is a timeless story. The graphics are mostly excellent and the audio is overall great, although it does have some distortion to it. It's not so clean anymore.
What's wrong with Alice? Is there something out there?
A Snatcher, maybe. Katrina, you stay here.
The downside is that you have to cope with an outdated user interface, weird and time-consuming way of unlocking areas and conversation options. Also, don't expect wild animations and cartoon-like smooth graphics. Most art is still framed with characters doing eye blinks, but most of the times characters only have partially animated body parts.
Alright, do it, Metal.
Gillian, don't forget, 30 minutes. You must get out before then.
I understand.
And yes, this game is in a desperate need of a remake. But this will never happen since the rights are for sure at Konami, while Kojima left Konami a few years ago and Konami did some unjust to an earlier Metal Gear game. There was a fan fee or remake in the making, but that has been in limbo for quite some time. The game has a pretty open ending and sets up for a sequel. Here's hoping that Konami brings in Kojima for some game advice and a shot at a remake. Thank you for watching this episode of In Retrospective. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, it helps me a lot, and if you want to keep updated on those retro review videos, do subscribe. And I'll see you at a next In Retrospective video.